My name is David Gill. I have the privilege of being the CFO at Juvenescence. And today, I'm here to tell you about the challenges of an aging population, but also about the opportunities that we can see through some of those challenges and how Juvenescence seeks to monetize those opportunities. So first off, this is what we call the aging equation. So as you'll see, the G7 population is forecast to be over half of people who are 65 years or older by 2075. And that pales compared to China, where 300 million people are due to retire in the next decade. Add to that the burden of chronic disease. People over 65, 9 out of 10 of them have at least one chronic illness. 8 out of 10 have 2 or more. So the combination of those two factors equates to a burden on society, illustrated by forecasts that 35% of US GDP will be spent on healthcare costs by 2040. That's clearly unsustainable. And at Juvenescence, we have a mission to prolong Healthspan. What is Healthspan? Well, as you age, incidence of chronic diseases increase. And that in turn accelerates the aging process. So by treating those chronic diseases, we aim to give more healthy years. Founded in 2017 by Jim Mellon, Dec Dugan, and Greg Bailey, Juvenescence has built up a pipeline of assets and now has a number of drugs which are ready to enter clinical trials. And that's why they've hired Richard Marshall, who has an enviable CV, formerly with AstraZeneca, where he got 5 drugs to market in 4 years, including the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID vaccine, for which he received a CBE. And Richard's been building out a very impressive clinical team, which I'll tell you more about shortly. So Juvenescence was founded in 2017, one of the first into the longevity field, and it now has a maturing pipeline of assets. The banks picked up on the potential of longevity from 2018, citing the multi-billion-dollar potential, and others have been getting in on the act more recently. Some of the bigger dollar numbers raised in the last few years are just a couple of companies. So Alphabet's Calico and Jeff Bezos's Altos. So those companies are going after epigenetic reprogramming, so actually reversing the aging process itself. And that's terrific for building the field of knowledge for the longevity field more generally. But at Juvenescence, we're going after some drugs with near-term potential to treat age-related diseases. So we look at it, the underlying mechanisms of aging, such as cognition, and look for molecules that treat those underlying mechanisms. And in so doing, we're developing medicines to treat the diseases of aging, such as dementia, and building a body of evidence for safety all along the way. And ultimately, the key is to prove that we have safe and efficacious products that we can take into prevention mode. So, you don't have to imagine what an anti-aging drug looks like. GLP-1s are very much in the papers at the moment. I was reading in this week's Economist about the forecast impact of that for Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk sales. Their forecast with their 2 drugs, Wegovy and Ozempic, to sell many, many billions, so almost $80 billion between them by 2030 per annum. The so-called skinny jab treats some of the metabolic underlying mechanisms in the body, and that in turn, as well as being helpful for weight loss, can help healthy aging itself. And these drugs are set to eclipse all of the biggest blockbusters that have gone before, including Humira already. And if a truly anti-aging drug can be developed and brought to market, then it's forecast to do around $200 billion. What does this do to a company's market cap? Well, the blue line here is, of course, Novo Nordisk, and the market capital has more than doubled since it launched its Wegovy GLP-1 product, and it's overtaken LVMH as the most valuable company in Europe. So at Juvenescence, we have a broad pipeline of assets advancing towards the clinic, and it's important to have multiple shots on goal. This is biotech, so not everything is going to succeed. We focus our assets on first-in-class, which means they're going after a new mechanism of action for a particular disease. We'll take these assets through phase 1, possibly phase 2 clinical trials, and then we'll seek to collaborate with Big Pharma. We're never going to have the infrastructure that Big Pharma has to take them through phase 3 or even into the market. And I'll tell you more about that monetization potential shortly. So since joining in January 2023, Richard has been building out the clinical development team to develop these drugs. And between them, this team has around 150 years of experience and have developed drugs with peak annual sales of more than $30 billion. So we've got the team. Now I'm going to tell you about 3 drugs that they're working on. First is our PI1 inhibitor. This was discovered in the Amish population in the US, where some of the population have normal PI1 expression and others have reduced PI1 expression. Reduced expression is the blue line, and they happen to live 10 years longer. But there isn't a regulatory pathway to develop a drug to make you live 10 years longer today. And so we're going after diseases that could be treated with this. And our models show that our PI1 inhibitor reduces fibrosis, which is the scarring of lungs, livers, kidneys, cardiovascular. So it's got great potential to treat many fibrotic diseases. And I'm pleased to say the clinical trials for this program will be starting in May of this year. It's an oral small molecule, which means it's easy to take, and the COGS can be brought down as it scales. Next, I'll tell you about our CD38 inhibitor. You may have heard of NAD supplements. They don't work. But this goes after CD38 and is a drug that does work. CD38 is an enzyme that increases as you age, and it's attached to immune or white blood cells. And CD38 consumes NAD, which is important to energy, metabolism, and healthy cell function. And so, as you age, NAD declines and inflammation tends to increase. Our CD38 inhibitor reduces CD38 and in turn increases NAD. And we've shown in models that this reduces inflammation in joints. So there's great potential to treat rheumatoid arthritis as a primary indication. But this drug could also be used to treat fibrotic diseases, insulin resistance, and potentially others. This drug will be entering the clinic towards the end of this year in all likelihood. It's another first-in-class drug, and it's also a small molecule, and it's highly efficacious and safe. Lastly, I'll tell you about our plasmalogens. We only came out with these last year, having got the IP locked up. This is a very unique asset. Plasmalogens are lipids which form part of cell membranes throughout the human body, but they're particularly concentrated in the central nervous system. And there's a linkage between the decline in plasmalogens and increase in dementia. So you can see the potential that this asset has. Currently, there's nothing like it on the market. You can buy plasmalogen supplements, but they don't do anything, and they often come from unethical sources. Our plasmalogen are synthetically manufactured and highly efficacious and safe. This is a bit further out than some of our other assets and is set to enter the clinic in mid-2025, but it's clearly one we're very excited about. So what does that mean for monetization? Well, the answer is licensing to big pharma, typically. So you may have an upfront milestone payment, ongoing royalties, and potentially clinical milestones as the drugs progress. Big pharma don't do nearly enough R&D to replenish their pipeline, and so they have to come to biotech companies. And they're buying assets earlier and earlier. As you'll see, phase 1 and phase 2 assets are very commonly the sources of pipeline inflows for big pharma. So that's the first option. The other option is to sell the risks and rewards of ownership outright and sell your assets to big pharma through acquisition. And there's been a pickup in M&A activity after a few quiet years recently. A deal was just recently announced with GSK acquiring Ilos, a small biotech, with one respiratory asset that had been through a phase 1 clinical trial. And the founders of Juvenescence have 2 of the top 10 biopharma deals of the last 10 years under their belts, including their drug Nurtec, which is used to treat migraines and was developed by Biohaven and was sold in 2022 for $12 billion. So, to recap, there's a real crisis with aging populations and the diseases of aging creating a burden on society. But all is not lost. There are drugs out there that can be used to treat these age-related diseases and give people more healthy years. And at Juvenescence, we're going after those diseases of aging, and with monetization potential as early as mid-2025.